Hi everyone, good morning. So as you guys can see, I'm now back in my home here in Metro Manila. And if you've been following me here on YouTube or Instagram, you might have seen that I was in Hiroshima for the Brush Festival this year. Now, the Brush Festival this year was quite subdued, but it was still full in spirit. But for our video today, I'm not going to talk about the Brush Festival. And the main reason why is because when I was there, I actually received some PR here at home. And it's actually from Rephr. So I'm actually very excited for this. And I'm sure by now you would have seen all of the releases on social media for their new products. And I actually have the Koyo brush and the Shodo set. So we'll be talking about this today. And I'm very excited about it because it's actually very rare for me to receive PR well before the release date. And that's why I'm making this video today, because we'll be talking about these brushes. We'll be checking it out, we'll be doing some comparisons, and of course we'll be trying out to see how it will work with my makeup sentiments. And the first brush that we'll be talking about is the Koyo brush. Look at that. So the term Koyo actually means to turn red, but in a much more larger sense, it's the turning of the color of leaves, and that's actually very well represented here on the handle. But before we get into details, let me just read the love letter that I got from Rephr here, and they say that the bristles here are a mix of Chikuhodo and squirrel. Fantastic. And it has a single press ferrule that gives it a very unique shape. Yes, it does. So the ferrule here is actually crimped at the back, but there's no crimp here at the front, and maybe this is what gives this brush head this very nice shape. Nice 3D shape. Okay, so we're calling it Koyo brush to celebrate the fall season in Japan when maple leaves turn red or gold. Alright, fantastic. So I actually do love the design on the handle here, because it's just a perfect representation of the season. And it's also extremely beautiful, especially now that I'm looking at it. The maquille design of it is actually fantastic, the artistry of it. And of course you have the color gold and red leaves here, and of course you have this very nice golden glitters at the base of the brush handle here that kind of fades into the black handle. It's actually very beautiful. Now I've actually shot this brush under natural light because I believe it just shines very beautifully, and I'm going to insert it here so that you guys can see how beautiful the luster is of this brush. Take a look at that. And the entire maquille design surround the entire brush handle, which is actually quite generous. I'm actually very impressed. And of course, we have the Rephr stamp located near the base of the handle at the area where the gold erupts. And at the back, we have the Japan stamp. And I just love the way that the gold glitters actually fade very nicely into the black color of the handle. And of course, we have the crimp of the ferrule here, as we discussed earlier. Fantastic. And of course, the pièce de résistance of this brush is the brush head, which is made of Chikuhodo and squirrel bristles. Look at that. Very nice and very soft. And it also goes back into position quite nicely. And this is the general shape of it, especially when you look at it from the side. Now, I'm really glad to see that Rephr leveled up their release for the holiday this year, because this is stunning. Because as you guys remember, Rephr released a number of holiday releases last year, especially their Chikuhodo brushes, and of course it still looks stunning and very pretty, but it kind of looked plain. And in comparison, if we place the Koyo brush beside the Chikuhodo version B, you guys can see on how simply stunning and memorable the Koyo brush is, just visually when you see it. Now, in terms of comparison between these two brushes, the brush designs is quite similar, as you guys can see here, especially from this position if we take a look at it from the top. And then the only slight difference that we see is when we put both of the brushes on its sides, wherein the Koyo brush here actually flares out more to the side, wherein the Chikuhodo version B brush here doesn't really bend out much, but they still have the same 3D shape here. Now, in terms of softness, I could say that both of these brushes are actually very soft, but the main difference that I can feel between these two is that you have more density in the belly of the brush head of the Rephr Chikuhodo version B brush, than in comparison to the Koyo brush here. Because after all, the brush head is also like, longer. So that's why, like, when you press the brush head of the Koyo brush here, it really splays out, like, it really doesn't have any, like, coarse strength in it. And if you are someone who actually has, like, very sensitive skin, this brush will be perfect for you because you will not feel it digging into your skin. Look at that. Look how soft it is. And I have noticed that the bristle strength of the Koyo brush actually, like, lies the strongest here in the front portion of the brush head, because after all, we have shorter bristles here, and shorter bristles for Chikuhodo and, like, gray squirrel, basing on my observation, they're actually they have more resiliency when they're actually shorter. So the strength of the brush head also maintains its integrity, maybe up until this portion. Yes, because the rest of the bristles here, especially at this part, is actually, like, quite airy already. So even, like, we're just playing with that brush portion alone, you can see on how airy it is. But then again, if you flip the brush head, and then if you just, like, press it this way, you can see that there's actually some strength here, which is actually quite surprising. I was not expecting that. So this at least, like, can give us another way to actually use this brush head. I'm thinking now in my head, like, what I can use this brush with, and I think I could use it with very heavily pigmented powders, may it be, like, foundation powders, bronzers, and, like, I don't know, even blushes. And I just don't want to have a very high impact kind of a color application on my skin. So I will use this, and of course we will try out that theory a little bit later. Now for another comparison, I have here the Bobo and Chikuhodo collaboration brush, and this is the CH1. And I think this is an apt comparison to make because the CH1 is also made of Chikuhodo hair blended with squirrel. So if we put them together side by side here, of course, the main difference between these two brushes is actually the brush head length, because the Koyo brush here is a little bit longer, especially here at the back portion of the brush head, wherein the bristles are actually longer than the one from Bobo. But, like, if we put them side by side here, the difference of length is actually, like, not far from each other. But the main difference is that the Koyo brush here is airier in comparison to the brush of Bobo, and the Bobo brush here actually has a fuller belly than the Koyo brush here. Now in terms of bristle strength, of course, because this is, like, a little bit shorter, and it's also, like, crimped a little bit denser, so this will have more coarse strength than this. So if you have, like, let's say finishing powders and you only want to pick up the right amount, you can actually use this. So we'll try to see how well the Koyo brush will also work with finishing powders, because I like working with finishing powders. But for sure, with just, like, playing with the brush head alone, I cannot use this with my Guerlain Meteorites, because I don't think the bristles can, like, pick up product. But we'll see. We'll see how it works for me today. But one thing though that I have realized as I'm playing around with the brush head here, look at that. Look at how well it balances into shape and how well it actually maintains its shape. So for sure, I can also use this part of the brush head, maybe for applying, like, highlighting products, or even, like, for blending, or, like, adding maybe some precise application of color. So let's see. Like, that's one thing that I love about having these 3D types of brushes, because they are, quite versatile, and you can use them in more ways than one, especially depending on how you angle the brush into your face. Fantastic. Look at that. Very pretty, very soft, very luxurious feeling. Now, by the way, the packaging of the Koyo brush came in a very nice small Polonia box. Look at that. Of course, the Kumano Fude seal is here. And this is actually wrapped in washi paper. So if you've seen my unboxing of this, which I released as a short here on YouTube, I like the presentation of this year. And I, again, love this, like, very nice attention to detail. Now, I am not sure which brush company actually made this Koyo brush, and I'm just basing this off of the other brushes that I have here in my collection. But I have noticed that the Koyo brush here from Rephr shares some similarities with this brush from Koyudo. So this is the Sakura limited edition Saibiko brush that was released in 2023, and obviously both of these brushes have flat bases here, and flat bases are very it's a very Koyudo kind of a brush handle design. Now aside from that, I think the maki design on both of these brushes share similar artistic qualities, which is actually amazing. And I can also say that the gold glitters here that fades into the main color of the brush handles I think are applied using the same technique. But then again, I don't know, and that's just a hunch, but let me just say that this is a very stunning brush being released by Rephr this year. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try out this brush now on my face with different products, okay? So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to add a hint of some base makeup, and I'm going to start by using my Lisa Eldridge Skin and Makeup Enhancing Mist. Then I'm just going to press that in, and I'm just going to add a thin layer all over, just removing some redness and just to make me look presentable all over. So I already have my skincare on, so everything that I'm using is listed down on the description box, okay? So do check that out if you want to know what I used today. And now I'm going to be using my Radiant Creamy Concealer from NARS. I have a little bit of it already here on my palette, and I'm just going to mix that into my foundation just a little bit, and I'm going to apply it here in my under eye area. Alright, and also a little bit here around my lip area, my nose, and here. Okay, so that's concealer down, and now it's time for us to play with powder products. Before I continue, let me just set my under eye area with some loose translucent setting powder, because I don't think I can use the Koyo brush from my under eye area because the bristles, it's just way too big. Okay, so I can see that the brush head here actually disturbed my very little foundation concealer application there, so I'm gonna get a much more creamier, a stronger concealer, and this is the Secret Camouflage of Laura Mercier, and I am using the Rephr number 23 brush to apply this on my blemish here. Just tapping it in, blend out the edges, and fantastic. And let me get a small brush and let me just set that. Alright, so let's check to see how the Koyo brush will apply loose setting powder. So I just have a little bit of it now here on the cap, and let's just press the brush head also slightly. It did pick up the product amazingly well, which is good. And then let's just tap it onto the skin. Alright, so I'm happy to see that the Koyo brush was actually able to deliver some loose setting powder. And I think when you are using this for these types of product, you have to be very careful where you actually load the product onto the brush head. And you make sure that you load it in the area where you have the shortest bristles, because as I said earlier, that is where this brush has more strength, and by using it in a tapping motion, you're actually able to apply and deliver a nice even layer of the loose setting powder. But the thing is, you really have to work at it slowly, and you have to layer slowly, because this brush doesn't have any buffing ability because of how soft the bristles are. You would need to work to really set your face. But so far, I'm seeing that it's working quite well, and it's delivering a very nice hint of powder on my face. It's not overly thick, and at least there are no patchiness on my skin whatsoever, and I can see that it has really matted down my skin quite nicely. But I still have not lost the natural luminosity of my skin. Fantastic. Hang on, there's a bristle loss here. Very good. So I actually was not expecting this brush to be able to apply loose setting powder, but I'm happy to see that by doing this, the brush head has still really maintained its shape. Now, by the way, I washed this yesterday, so this is how the bristle looks like when it's fully bloomed and when it's out of its packaging. Okay, right, so let me just set the other side of my face now. Alright, so that's my foundation now set with powder. Looks quite nice. Fantastic. So let us try using the Koyo brush now with some pressed foundation powder. This is my MAC NC35. And of course, for sure the brush head will fit quite nicely into the pan here. Picks up a nice amount of product. So I think you guys can see now where the strength of this brush actually lies, because you get a concentration of the product more in this portion of the brush head, as I indicated earlier, Okay, so let's just do it in a sweeping motion maybe, because I already have some powder on. And I can actually see that it's actually applying the foundation powder quite nicely. Very nice, thin layers on the face. So at least, this brush will really help you not to pick up a ton of product from a pan like this, especially when you have hard pressed, powders like this. Because these foundation powders, especially from MAC, if you pick up a ton of product in one go, your face can look cakey in no time. Look at that. Nice even layer. Well blended, well applied, and now it's actually quite matte, but it's not overly matte, which I actually love. Fantastic. Alright, so now let's do a finishing powder, and this is the Translucent Honey Real Flawless Luminous Perfecting Pressed Powder from Laura Mercier. And let me just press the bristle into the pan here. It still was able to pick up product quite nicely. And let me just apply it here on my cheek area. I can see a hint of the product now on my cheeks. It's not overly so. So I'm actually seeing now that this brush is actually helping me layer different types of powder products very thinly on the face. And truthfully, now that I am seeing how this is working, I think this will be the brush that I would use if I would be retouching throughout the day, because I will not be picking up a lot of powder, and I won't be imparting a lot of powder on the face. But then again, because I'm a makeup artist and I'm on set a lot of time, this is actually perfect. But if you're someone also who's you're not very sure of your makeup skills, and you want to have a brush that's very fail-safe, very beginner-friendly, but very luxe at the same time, I think this is a nice beginner brush for you. And it's actually quite special because after all, it's a limited edition with this very nice handle design here. Because truthfully, at this stage in my life, sometimes these very nice maquille handles can be quite enticing when you actually want to purchase a brush for yourself, especially if you're someone who doesn't want to purchase a lot of brushes, and you want to have specific brushes in your collection that are timeless and special. I think this is good to have. Okay, I am liking how this brush is working so far, but I'm not liking how it became cloudy all of a sudden. So let me just readjust my lighting here in front of me before we continue, okay? Alright, so now it's time for us to try the Koyo brush with blush products, and we will start with a loose blush powder. This is from Givenchy, and this is in the color Tapetus Rose. Okay, so let me just flip the box here, and let me pour a little bit here on the cap. So I think I have way too much. So I think I have to redeposit some of the powder here into the packaging. And the main reason why I'm very light-handed with my approach to applying loose blush powder is because the brush head here is very airy. I know that it will not have enough buffing ability, especially if I go overboard with my blush application, okay? Right, so I have the color now on the bristle, and let me just tap it here into my highest points of my cheeks. It's delivering a very light application of color, and let me do it in a sweeping motion. And I'm seeing that I'm actually able to blend out the color quite nicely. Look at that. Look how nice and soft, well blended, and how airbrushed it looks. And this is the second layer of loose blush powder that I've added, and it's looking very well blended, very soft, and it's actually very, very nice. Fantastic. Look at that. I can even sweep it this way. Now, as I've said before, when you're using brush heads that have very soft bristles, may they be Saibikoho or even squirrel brushes, the way that you angle your brush head and the way that you actually apply it on your face, you have to be very specific and you have to be very determined, because usually the first impact side upon application of the brush head is actually where you'll get a concentration of color. Okay, so if you have a very high impact color, and then you're not being cautious with your approach, you'll have a very vibrant color there, and you might have difficulty blending it out because the bristles are actually very, very soft. Okay, but because I approached my blush application with caution, you can still notice that there is a specific impact of color in the highest points of my cheeks, and then I'm still able to buff out the color, and they're still looking very nice and well blended, and it's also already helping me to look like my cheek is a little bit sculpted, but the balance of color is still there, and that is really what is important. But then again, our makeup application and techniques and our a vision of how makeup is going to appear on our face is different. But for someone like me who likes to appear very nice and soft and diffused, I like how this brush is working with me today. Okay, now out of curiosity, I am going to be using a highlighting powder now. And this is from Hourglass. This was released early this year, and this was one of the releases that was blink and was gone. And I hope that they really return this back into the market because it's a very good set. Anywho, so I am going to be using maybe a highlighting powder now, and I would like to use this color here, and I'm going to be using the back portion of the brush here, especially this part of the tip, and I'm gonna just really press it slowly here, and let's try to see if that will apply color. Now it did pick up a very nice hint of highlighting powder, which I like, and the main reason why is because I cannot go overboard with highlighting powders because I have oily skin, and even if I use let's say a matte foundation, things like that, my skin will get oily, it's gonna get shiny. So having this brush really enabled me to pick up a slight hint of highlighting powder. Look at that. It's not obtrusive, but it's there, and it's working very well, and it's blending very nicely with the blush that I used, and it's giving the blush a hint of dimension. I love it. Okay, and I'm gonna go back, and I'm just gonna add a hint of that highlighter here on my brow bone, but not too much. Okay, so I'm just going to pick up some of that loose powder now, and then I'm just gonna dry brush it to clean it, because I want to apply some bronzer on this side of my face. And I'm going to be using my NARS Laguna, my very well loved NARS Laguna. So I'm going to really press the bristle now. Okay, picked up a good amount of product. And I'm going to maybe hold it at an angle like this. And then I'm going to make sure that the shortest tips here, the shortest bristles, will actually land on top of my cheekbone, and it's going to help me apply my bronzer in a bronzer manner because I'm someone who doesn't like contouring. Okay, fantastic. And now I'm going to flip the brush and maybe use the back tip here just to really help to blend out the color and maybe to help me sculpt it a little bit more. So let me pick up some of the bronzer now using the back of the brush head, and then I'm gonna lay it on my cheekbone. Ooh, that kind of worked. I love that. And then let me just buff everything now in an upward motion. Very nice, very nice. Light application of bronzer. Also very well blended. So let me apply a hint of that here now onto my non-existent hairline in my temple area. Fantastic. Okay, so let's layer some bronzer on this side now. And I'm just gonna press it on my cheek. Okay, I'm just gonna buff it out. Okay, I kind of like on how very light it did apply some bronzer, which is fantastic. And it also did not dull down the color of my blush, because sometimes that's something that I'm very careful with, because when you apply a bronzer, you tend to lose the intensity and the depth of your blush, and sometimes if you overdo it, it can become muddy. And if there's one thing that I don't like when you're doing makeup, is that you look muddy. Because the thing with me is, when I'm doing makeup, I prefer it if I have a very nice even skin tone, nice pop of color, and of course some bronzing, just to give my face some structure. But all in all, as you guys can see, the colors on my skin are not overbearing. They're very nicely well placed, and they're very nice, even and soft, and I like that. Okay, so now let's try one more blush product before we move on to the Shodo eyeshadow brushes. And I'm going to be using this Armani number 50 blush. And let me just remove any excess bronzer here on the microfiber towel. Okay, now the reason why I wanted to try this out is because this has a lot of glitters on it. And I have noticed that if I use a very dense brush with this blush, I will pick up a ton of the glitters on it, and when I over apply it on the face, it tends to enhance my texture. So let's see on how this brush will actually apply this blush product. So I'm applying it here in the highest points of my face. I can already see the warmth coming through, and let me just buff it slowly and blend it out. Okay, so as you guys can see, the reflectivity of the glitters of this blush is now on my cheek, but it's not overly so. It's looking to be well balanced, and I actually love that. Now, I think this brush has similar qualities to the Bobo and Chikuhodo brush, but I tend to become more light-handed when I'm actually using this, because this is still quite a dense brush, despite on how soft it is, but I'm sure you guys can see on how strong it is, and it actually still delivers a very nice hint of color. Now I think in doing this activity alone, I believe that the Bobo and Chikuhodo CH1 brush together with a Koyo brush is a great pairing, especially if I am going to be layering a lot of powder products on the face. Lovely, fantastic, I love that. Very pretty. I love what we're doing today. Okay, so now it's time for us to talk about the Shodo eyeshadow brushes. Now, according to the love letter of Rephr that I got here, their new collection is called Shodo and is named after the art of Japanese calligraphy, where artists create bold strokes, intricate lines, and accents, all with a single brush. Interesting. So the Shodo brushes have a unique fiber structure that allows you to apply and blend with the side of the brush, while easily getting incredible precision by engaging the tip of the brush. I see. Okay, yeah, because if we take a look at the bristles here, they look to be quite sharp at the tips of the bristles, if you guys can see here. Because it's not your typical, especially this one, it's not your typical flat and round, eyeshadow brush. Because you can see, a lot of the fibers here, really sticking out. And I believe this is just, caused by how this brush was actually pressed, because for sure if this was not pressed, it would have looked similar to the other two brushes from the Shodo collection. Okay, so the Rephr Shodo brushes is your typical Rephr brush, wherein you have black handles here, and the name Rephr is stamped at the front, and the Shodo name is stamped at the back. Very nice. And of course we have a black ferrule here, and we have these goat hair fibers. And mind you, they look quite interesting, especially looking at it up close. Now the Rephr Shodo 00 here is quite different because this is the only one that it's crimped, and the rest of the brushes here actually have non-crimped ferrules, and they're all like, circular ferrules. Nice strength in all of the brushes here. I can feel the strength in the core of each of the bristles. So Shodo 001 is your typical, like, working type of a brush head, wherein I'm sure you can use this to lay down color, to apply color, and to blend out color into the eyes. Now I can actually feel so much, like, resilience in the bristles of this. There is so much core strength in this, and, like, in reference to my previous experience with Rephr, I always tend to use them with either, like, liquid eyeshadows or, like, hard pressed eyeshadow products. And in touching all of these brushes alone, I feel the same way. Okay, all right, so before we try this out, let's talk about the Shodo 02 brush here. Now this one looks to be like a crease brush. Now despite the softness of the bristles here, look at how snappy it goes back into position. So again, it's actually very, very resilient. Nice core strength here. And for sure, this brush can really help us to apply a very, like, detailed application of eyeshadow color into the eyes. Let's see if that theory of mine is going to work out for us later. And of course, the Shodo 03 is bigger than the Shodo 02. It's more of, like, a blending brush or a crease brush. No, it's actually more of a, like, crease brush because it has a very nice sharp point here. And this can really help you to, like, anchor the brush into your socket line area, and can really help you to blend out and to buff out color. But again, wow, such strength in the tips of the bristles here. I'm sure you can really blend out colors with this brush. Fantastic. Now, truthfully, when I look at the bristles here, I don't have these, I don't have anything similar to these brushes currently. But just to have some idea, so I'm gonna put like these blending brushes together first. So 02 here, and this is 03, and I'm gonna put everything right beside most of the, like, blending brushes that I have in my collection, so that you guys just can see the difference between the two Rephr Shodo brushes in comparison to the other, like, blending brushes that I have in my collection. It's very, very different. Everything else is rounded, while although the two Rephr Shodo eyeshadow brushes here look like they're blending brushes, but they just appear sharper at the tips here. Okay, and I hope that also gives you an idea of the size of the brush head of the Rephr 02 here, which is right beside the Rephr number 13 brush. And this is the mini booster from Sonyeji. This is the number 14 from Rephr. This is the Crease M from Sonyeji, and this is the J146 from Hakuhodo. And this one here is the Crease Pro, right beside the Rephr 03. So again, I'm just putting all of these together just for size reference, okay? But very different brush head design. Now for the Rephr 00 Shodo brush, if I just get, like, other similar type of brush heads and put them together. So this is the old Worker 3 from Sonyeji, let me put it here. This is the new Worker S, and this is the Worker Pro. So of all of the other brushes at the moment, the Worker Pro actually almost shares the similar shape, but the brush head of the Shodo 00 here is just, like, smaller, and it's also longer. And if you put them to the side here, you guys can see that the other Worker brushes from Sonyeji, they're quite full in the belly, while the Shodo 00 here, the brush head is actually quite, like, slim in the middle. And again, it's so amazing actually, like, when I am feeling these three brushes together, like if I touch them in this way, it's so obvious that they look like, they have very resilient bristles and they have a very strong core. But if I touch the tips here, look how soft the movements of the tips are. Look at that, very nice. So at least I think these soft tips here are the ones that makes the Shodo eyeshadow brushes quite special. And these are the part of the brush that can actually buff out color and make the eyeshadow appear soft on the eyes. So it's really reflective of their inspiration for calligraphy brushes. Okay, so I'm actually quite interested to see how these Shodo brushes from Rephr are going to apply and blend out colors on our eyes today. Okay, so let us start. Okay, so I pulled out my Tise Kambon from Chanel, and I would like to start with picking up this pinky shade here, and I am using the Rephr 00 brush here. So I'm just really pressing it into the pan, and this is how much product it picks up, and it has picked up a ton of the color in this portion of the brush head, because from what I see here, there are some portions of the bristles wherein it's shorter and it gets longer. Okay, and that's very obvious if we put the brush on the side here. So I'm going to just lay the product here on my eyelid, and it's actually applying the product quite nicely. Also nice, like, intensity of color. And I was thinking that it was really going to apply a very intense amount of eyeshadow, but it actually did not, and I'm actually able to buff out and to blend it out. It does remarkably apply the color in a very precise area of the eye, which is actually, like, quite surprising, because I was not expecting that to happen. And now I'm just angling the brush in this way, because I have noticed that all the pigment that has been loaded into the brush here, if I apply it this way, it can also help me to apply the color as close to the base of my lash line as possible. And in a sweeping motion, I'm just going to buff it out and to blend it out. It's actually quite nice, and I can see that there's no fallout happening so far, so that's actually great. But then again, this is a baked gelée formula, so they might be working very well together. Okay, now for out of curiosity, let me just flip the brush head, and let me try to apply that here into my socket line area. And let me blend it out. That kind of worked. And I do have to say though, is that I am actually not picking up a ton of pigment so far, which is actually surprising again. But I'm picking up a nice even amount of color, because after all, as you can see here on the pan, it's a very vibrant pink. But as you guys can see here on my eyes, it did apply a very nice, amount of color, also very well blended. Now let me just, use the tip of the bristle here, and let me just try to help me to create a shape for my eyes. Let me blend that to my socket line, and let me buff that out well into my brow bone area. That's actually quite nice. I was not expecting that. Okay, and with the tips of the bristles here, I'm gonna pick up more, and I'm just gonna deliver that here in my lower lash line. Let me lift that up. Fantastic! This is a nice brush. I kind of like it. Okay, let's go on hard with this very intense, purplish shade here, and I am loading the very tips of the bristles of the brush head here, and let me apply that here onto my socket line area, and let me buff that out. Okay, so I actually was not expecting this brush. This is the Shodo 03 brush, to actually apply and blend out this shade softly on my eyelid, because I was initially worried that I might pick up too much color, but so far I am seeing that it's actually applying a very nice well balanced amount of color onto my socket line area. It has also enhanced my socket line, and I'm actually able to blend out the color quite nicely. And of course, it did help me to create the shape for my eyes, just so that I have a lift going on. Fantastic. I was not expecting that at all. Okay, now let's go on and use Shodo 02, and I'm going to be picking up the same purplish color here. And I have a concentration of the color at the tip of the bristles. And I'm gonna use it to apply intensity on the outer V area. Wow, I'm actually quite surprised to see on how soft these brushes are blending out colors into my eyelids right now. Okay, so I'm picking up more of the pigment and I'm applying it here onto my socket line, just for more intensity. Ooh, actually quite nice. I like that. Okay, so it's also very easy to maneuver the brush. Like for example, I was able to create a nice flick here, very soft. And I was also able to blend that into my socket line area. Wow, I kind of like that. And with the Shodo 03 brush, I'm just going to buff out the edges and blend everything. Such amazing strength on the Shodo 03 here. And of course, because as I've shown you before, when I was reviewing some eyeshadow brushes from Rephr, I actually changed the way that I apply pressure when I am using Rephr eyeshadow brushes, because I already know how resilient and strong the cores of their eyeshadow brushes are. So I'm even being more light-handed than usual. But so far, I'm very surprised on how soft, well blended, and also how precise these three brushes have applied color on my eyes so far. So let me get an eyeliner, because I kind of like how this is looking. So where's my eyeliner? Okay, so I've already laid down some of this Kitten Flick liquid eyeliner from Lisa Eldridge, because I believe that will just bring everything together. And of course, some mascara also from Lisa Eldridge, because this will just really help to complete the look. Okay, and I'm just gonna get a little bit of the deepest shade now of the Tisa Kambon color, and I'm just gonna try to apply it as close to my lash line as possible, just so that it's gonna give us a depth of color. Okay, and now what I want to do is I want to emphasize my lids a little bit, and because this pinky shade here has some gold in it, I pulled out my liquid eyeshadow from Chanel, and I am using the Shodo 02 brush here, and I'm just swirling the tip of the bristles here on the product, and I'm gonna lay it on top. And that's actually working quite nicely, and the yellow tone of the gold is also working very well in counteracting with the purple tones of the eyeshadow, and it's just popping quite nicely. Fantastic. And let me add a little bit of that here in the inner corner. Now, I really do hope though that Rephr will make a smaller brush like this, maybe make it Shodo 2.5 or maybe Shodo 04, because I think a smaller brush would work fantastically, especially if you want to be even more detailed, like applying more color as close to the lash line as possible, or even here in the brow bone area. But they just maintain the shape and also the airiness and the density, but just make it shorter or maybe a little bit thinner. That would, I think, really work well, and it can be a nice addition into the Shodo series. Okay, fantastic. So let me just blend out the edges. And finally, let's try a liquid eyeshadow, and this is the color Bianca from Lisa Eldridge. And I'm going to be using the Rephr 00 for this, because after all, it looks like a very nice laid down kind of a brush, a worker type of a brush head. And I'm just going to lightly brush the liquid eyeshadow all over my eyelid. Huh. Then it's applying the product very well. And let me change the orientation of how I'm applying the liquid eyeshadow now. And the reason why I'm applying it this way is because I have noticed that the tips of these eyeshadow brushes are working very well and actually helping you to blend out, color, and also to be quite precise with your, eyeshadow application. And I find that if you're laying the brush like this, the tips of the bristles here are already applying color into your socket line, and that's already helping you to blend out the color quite nicely aside from laying it down all over your eyelid. Take a look at that. I love it. So especially if you're someone who likes one and done eyeshadow looks and you like using a lot of liquid eyeshadows, I think this brush is a perfect companion to that. And so far, I'm not seeing a lot of fallout going on, especially with the fact that I'm not using any eyeshadow base with us today. Fantastic. Okay, let me add a little bit of that here, just for a much more cohesive look. I like that. Fantastic. Alright, so I believe we have come to the end of my vlog for today. So I hope that you guys enjoyed me showing you how I got to know the Koyo brush and the 3 Shodo eyeshadow brush from Rephr. I loved how they performed with me today. I was actually not expecting this at all, and they are working very well with my makeup sentiments. Now, I'm going to link everything down on the description box because these brushes are finally available for purchase at Rephr today. So please let me know if you are interested in getting any of these brushes, and if you decide to get them, please let me know what type of products you use them with, and maybe I might learn something from you. Okay, so that's it. I'm going to let you guys go now. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope you're having a good day wherever you are. Bye! Thank you, Rephr! Arigatou gozaimasu!